Okay, so now we're going to take a look at returning arrays from methods. So this is pretty similar to what we saw with passing arrays into methods, where things are being passed by reference. So whenever we want to return an array from a method, so we're using it as part of our return statement, technically what we're doing there is returning a reference to the array. So in the following example, we can see the numbers variable, or more specifically so the numbers variable is going to hold the same reference as the nums variable that is in our getArray method. So we've got in our main method, we set up or declared the numbers array. It's going to be an int array. That's going to be equal to the value that we are returning from our call to the getArray method. So then looking at the getArray method, we can see that the data type, the return type for it, is going to be an int array. So we're being very specific about that with the return type in the method header. Then we go ahead and declare and construct this int array called nums. And we're going to go ahead and return nums. So we're going to return the reference that nums holds to this 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 array. And so the one thing to keep in mind when it comes to returning arrays from our methods is that this is a little bit different from whenever we want to pass an array into a method, because of the fact that when we do this return, that's also going to be the end of this method. So we're going to return this reference to nums, and then we're going to terminate this method, meaning that everything within the scope of that method is basically irrelevant at that point. And so because of the fact that we don't really care about anything within the scope of that method anymore, we don't really care about the fact that we are making a copy to the reference rather than a copy to the actual array object. By the time that this method is done and we've passed that on to assign it to the numbers array back in the main method, at that point, numbers is effectively going to be the only thing that references that particular array object. So if we put together this code, we don't need to do any sort of copying whenever we make this this pass or this return from getArray back to the main method. It doesn't really matter. So if we go ahead and put together this little bit of code, so we'll come over here. So go ahead and create a new Java application, so I have a new project. For this one, I'll call this one returning arrays. Go ahead and click finish. So we'll go ahead and remove the comments. And inside of the main method, we'll go ahead and set up the declaration, and then I'll modify this to include the assignment after we define our method. So we're going to have our int array called numbers. So we'll go ahead and just do the declaration for that right now. And then right here, we'll go ahead and set up the method. So that's going to be getArray. So we'll do public static. And then we want to make sure that the return type is an int array. So we're going to go ahead and specify that there. And then the name getArray. And then right here, we'll go ahead and put in the body of this the construction of that array and then returning that. So we're going to say int array, we'll call it nums. This is going to be equal to our first 5 even numbers from 2 through 10. So do 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And then we'll go ahead and just return nums. And then coming back over here, we'll go ahead and say this is equal to getArray. So basically what's going to happen is we've constructed this array here. We have assigned a reference to that in nums. When we do this return nums right here, we're going to return the reference to this array object. So that's going to be somewhere else in memory. And then after we do this return, basically the entire scope of this method, that's going to be kind of, we'll say, destroyed or just be made irrelevant. So essentially this reference that nums provides, coming from nums itself, that's going to be destroyed as well. And at that point, numbers up here is going to be the only thing that references the array object, this array object that we constructed right here. So because of that, we don't have to worry too much about doing any sort of copying with this. Only one variable is going to end up holding the reference to this array object. So that's all that's going to matter at that point in the program. All right, so at this point, this is going to wrap up everything for returning arrays from methods. So a little bit simpler than passing arrays into methods. Getting into the next video, we're going to take a look at some additional types of arrays that we can construct besides just these integer arrays or numeric arrays. We're going to go ahead and take a look at creating arrays of strings, as well as discussing a little bit about creating arrays from our own custom classes.